Hi, and welcome back to Beyond the Monsters. Today I have Sheri with me, all the way from Arizona, and she's going to share her story with us. So we're going to dive in. Trigger warning: sexual assault, rape, abuse, and other explicit content.
All right. Thank you so much for having me and giving me an opportunity to share
Of
about
course.
child grooming and human trafficking. It's a very uncomfortable topic to discuss, but reality is we need to be uncomfortable to
Yes.
be able to spot this and stop it. So, I'm going to take you all the way back to when I was 15. I was just a normal kid. I was very shy, quiet, didn't really have a lot of self belief or self esteem, which I
Right.
think is a lot of teenagers, right?
Yes.
So I was the middle of three girls. I came from a stable home, and as I share this, I'm gonna it'll kind of knock some of the traditional narratives that you hear out there. Like I was never in foster care. My parents, I was not a child from a single family. We were well off. So when I say this, it's any child can be groomed. That's what
Right.
I want people to understand. This can happen to any child. So it's a disservice to the children in your life if you don't become educated. So, 15, I just finished my middle school years. I was going to go into high school, and I was really afraid of that. I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to cope? Um, because I'd worked really hard to make my very small group of friends in middle school. It was hard for me to make friends because I was so quiet and shy, and I had a hard time with that. And I was going to lose a lot of them because our home set on this cutoff line, the boundary of high schools.
Okay.
And also, I was going to go into high school and follow my older sister who excelled at everything. And I knew I was going to be compared to her. And I was. Very first day I
Okay.
started high school, I walk into class and teacher's like, "Oh, you're so and so's sister." And I just looked at her and said, "My name is Sheri, and I am going to disappoint you." And I took a seat in the back of the room. And that's exactly what happened.
Oh,
Well, and that happens a lot with families with siblings that are close in age. And every child
mm-hmm.
has a different gift, but
Right.
academically in school, they almost expect you to be the same. And I wasn't. And my parents were very busy people. They both had jobs, they were very busy. And I always describe it this way: because my older sister excelled so much, she got my very busy parents' attention. My younger sister was on the opposite end. She had some learning challenges. So she got my very busy parents' attention. And I was neither. I was just average. I didn't cause any problems. I was just kind of there. And so I was kind of the invisible child in a way. They could just rely on me to be a good kid, and I was. So high school was very hard in the beginning, and I just didn't know where to fit in. And all kids do that, right? So
Right.
I eventually tried out for the high school musical. Now I'm not gifted in singing or dancing, but there was a part where it was just kind of you just like go in circles, and nobody else wanted to do that, so I signed up for it and I got the part. And I thought, awesome, I'm proud of myself. I did something on my own, so I was proud of myself.
Right.
It was a big accomplishment. And I always say, well, for those that work on some type of a school production, you have to build and take care of the set. So that's what we do on Saturdays. We would come in and work on the set. And there was one Saturday I was painting a piece of wood. Very simple. I was just painting a piece of wood. That's what I was assigned to do. But you know how you have that feeling when somebody's staring at you from
Mm-hmm.
behind? You know, that creepy heebie jeebie feel. So I knew somebody was staring at me, and I turned around, and it was one of the cute football players. And when I talk in public, I always pause right there because I ask people, when I realized he was staring at me, what do you think I was thinking? Like, what do you think I was thinking when he was staring at me?
Well, because you were shy and everything, you probably thought it was something wrong or
You are the
negative.
you are the first one that said that.
Yeah.
You were the very first one. I thought I was doing something
Automatically.
wrong.
Right.
Exactly. Everybody
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, they thought he thought you were cute or something like that." No, I thought I was doing something wrong because there's
Right.
that pecking system, and that's awesome. You got it. There's that pecking system in
Yes.
high school, and he's like way up here, and I'm just this little peon,
Right.
and that's exactly what happened. But that opened the door to my being introduced to his father, who was actually the groomer. So in my
Mm.
book, I give this high school boy the name Carl, and he introduced me to his father, and his father did the grooming over a course of 3 months, which is mental manipulation. They Carl's job was to play the role of a boyfriend, and because Carl was very much involved with this, and learn as much about me and my family as possible so his father could use that as manipulation. And that's what happened.
So he has
Um,
his teenage son participating in this entire thing with him.
yeah. Yeah, and
Wow.
he would hurt his son. In my book, I talk about a time that he had a broken arm because he didn't do something his father wanted him to do. But you got to remember, this is back in the late 1980s where things were just a little different. People didn't look at you so much if your kid walked in with a broken arm,
Right.
and you would never question how it really happened. So um, that was Carl's job, and he did it well. He played that role, and his father would start to fill the voids that I felt I had. Like I didn't feel like I belonged. Oh, we'll come to these parties we have. Everybody will love you. You'll feel belonged. And I did. I started coming to these parties on Friday nights. I knew my parents wouldn't let me go, so the lying started.
Mm.
Um, and it was that I would tell them that I was at a family friend's house who my parents knew, never checked up on me. Red flag, never checked up on me. Always
Mm.
check up on where your kids are.
Right.
Um, and two, Carl never ever came to my house to pick me up. I lived really close to an elementary school, and so Carl would always pick me up there to take me to the parties. Red flag number two. But I was so infatuated with this boy, I didn't think anything about it because,
Right. And he was probably showing you attention and
yeah,
all the things that you've wanted. Yeah.
100% he was. He was just love bombing me. And so a big thing that was kind of an issue in our family is I had no brothers. So there was no son to carry on the family name. And I was the tomboy as a child, so I was the closest that would go out there and play ball with my dad and things like that. So Carl's father used that and said, "Well, I'll be the brother that you never had." And so when he's starting to say these things to me, he's starting to emotionally make a connection with me
Mm-hmm.
because I start to view him less as an adult and more as a friend and maybe even like an ally in many ways because he's like, "Oh, I'll protect you. No one's going to mess with you in school." And so this was a continuous process over 3 months where I would go to the parties on a Friday night. Then it ended up being where I was at these parties the entire weekend. And my parents never asked me where I was because I kept telling them that I was working on this big project with my friend who lived
Friend.
across the world.
Yeah.
And so that's how the grooming aspect happened. And then I knew something was happening because my body was showing signs of it, but I couldn't remember being assaulted or anything like that happening. And then there was one Saturday that Carl's father said, "Go get the basement ready for that night." And I'd never been in the basement. I saw a lot of people go in the basement, and I wanted to go help do whatever was going to be at the party. And I was told no. So that night, I was taken to the basement, and I woke up in the middle of being raped. So what they were doing is they were giving me sedatives, uh, not something that I'd get hooked on, but it was sedatives to where I would lose all inhibition, I would be compliant, and I would not necessarily remember what was happening to me.
Right.
But at that particular time, I did wake up. I went back to sleep. But then from that point, this nice guy who was supposedly the brother that I never had now flipped and became the evil trafficker and had tremendous expectations on me that I had to comply with.
Wow.
Yeah. So
So when you woke up, you had went back to sleep. Do you remember? Did you just kind of pretend like it wasn't even happening, or you froze?
I froze.
Yeah.
I froze. I vividly remember Carl's father's face kind of on the side of me. There were a lot of men in the room. What was happening to me is that every time I was being raped, it was being recorded. They had one of those big cameras in the room. And so that became blackmail to keep me complicit. So I'm 15. We never really talked about the birds and the bees at home. So I didn't really understand the reactions of my body, and I had no one to talk to. And then now I have this man who I thought I could trust now is scaring me to death, and saying, well, yeah, we recorded everything and they even showed me some of it. So I knew it was real. We're going to show your mom and dad. They're going to lose their jobs. You're all going to be homeless. It's going to be your fault. I didn't even understand the concept of homeless. What did
Right.
that mean?
Right.
I just thought, okay, my mom and dad are going to lose their jobs and that's going to be on my shoulders. And so then I started to just really withdraw inward. I
Yeah.
coped in very unusual ways with this. And it's funny because in some ways it still helps me today, but I never got addicted to any substances or alcohol, but I was able to detach my mind from my body. So I
Mhm.
disassociated.
Right.
So I'd be out in this world while other things were happening. And I think now, and I know now, because I had to learn that skill, this is what helps me be able to talk about it. Because I
Right.
put myself for the moment over here and I can talk about it.
Hmm.
And then I do self-care afterwards and bring myself together and with the grace of God.
Right.
100%. So from the age of 15 to 18, all my high school years, I lived at home and I was sold on the weekends and during the summer. My parents required me to get a job during the summer, so I did. I worked at various different places during the summer, and I
So
thought that
where did they think that you were like after this is a long project, you know, like where like what kind of
they
stories
thought
are
I
you
was
making up now?
that I'm still at my friend's house. I
Oh,
had spent a lot of time with her. She had been a friend that I knew since elementary school. I spent a lot of time at her house prior
okay.
to any of this even happening to me. So they
Okay.
just didn't think anything about it. And in the summer, both my parents worked, so my older sister was kind of in charge of us, but she's just a year older than me. She's doing her own thing, so we all just scattered and went
Right.
wherever we went, because I wasn't always sold at night. Sometimes it was during the day. Uh,
Were they
so
drugging you the whole regardless of when it was or did
in the
at
beginning,
in the beginning?
in the
And then
beginning, and then I fought them, and so in the beginning, if I didn't willingly take it, they would actually, Carl's father, they would actually pin me down on the couch and force this alcohol with this drug in it down my throat. And it's like, okay, you have no choice but to swallow, right? Or
right.
I tried to spit some of it out, but really, I got to the point where I just detached, and
Sure.
that's how I coped with all of this. I For some reason I was terrified of drugs,
Mhm.
just terrified of them. And so that's how I coped. I would just go into another little world.
Just surviving. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very much surviving. and then I would just be this confused kid. But because I was already quiet and shy and spent a lot of time in my rooms, those would be things that people would normally look for in a child that's being groomed but and now trafficked. But I was already that way. So what I would do at home is I would lash out at my parents, and I'd be very mouthy and tell them I hated them, just to try and see if they would ask me what's wrong. But they,
Right.
again, they just thought it was teenage behavior. And I have
Sure.
no way. How are you going to, when you're that young, how are you going to go up and tell your parents something that you don't even understand yourself?
Exactly. And this is, like you said, late 80s. It was very, very different then.
Hmm. Yeah, very different. And I would have been labeled a bad kid, even though the official term for grooming originated in 1980 by an FBI agent who stated it's a non-violent mental manipulation way to get a child to submit to sex acts. And even the word grooming has been hijacked to describe, you don't like this, okay, your child's being groomed. You don't like, and so that even the term grooming has just been hijacked, and it's
Right.
frustrating because I always go back to the term from 1980 because that's what it was. It was actions done with a specific purpose, which is to sell the child.
Right.
And so I'm 18 now, going through all this, just going through the motions of life.
Right.
Um, and it was March, so I was going to graduate high school in May. My mom asked me if I was going to go to college, and I said no, I wasn't going to college. And that made my mom mad because she was a professional woman. So she lashed out at me then and said, well, you're an adult now, move out. And I'm thinking, okay, I have a couple of months to find a place to go. And she says, no, you're an adult now, move out this weekend. So I
Oh.
moved out. And I had all these people who I made friends with at these parties that I thought were really my friends. No, you can't stay here. You can't stay here. So I ended up at Carl's house. And so from the time that March until that September, it was bad. It was
Now,
really,
just to back up just a little, was Carl still pretending like, oh, I'm her boyfriend? So
no,
that's like done.
that was done. He was 2 years older than me, and he had done this to other girls. So eventually I started talking with other girls that were at the party that were young, and so I found out all this stuff about Carl
Ugh.
and the game that they were playing. And I know Carl had said he really wanted to move away, go have a career, a life, but he ended up becoming a serial rapist, and he's in prison for life
Oh
for
my
that.
God.
So his life fell apart too. And in a lot of ways, he truly was just another victim of his father because
Right.
his father hurt him. Even
Sure.
though he's like, there was this star football player, his father would hurt him.
Right.
So
I'm
he
sorry.
ended up,
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted
yeah,
to
please.
get the picture of
Yeah.
what's Carl doing during all this at this point because this has been going on for so long.
When we would go to the parties, Carl would disappear. He'd go hang out with his buddies from the high school. So what it was adult men, high school girls, and Carl's friends. Carl's friends at least never, ever, ever assaulted me. They would all go out in the back. The home had a lot of acreage. They'd go out in the back and do what they would do. And the adult men would go to the various bedrooms with the girls, or down to the basement
So
if
there
they
were
were.
multiple girls.
Oh yeah, I was not the only one there, and they were not always the same girls each weekend. Where I lived in my vicinity, there were three major high schools, and so they were feeding all through all these three high schools, and we were big high schools. My graduating class was over 200 students,
Wow.
so they had a lot of young girls, and they preyed on the fact that young girls want to be loved. They
So
want,
impressionable. Yes.
they want to be, I wanted to feel special. I wanted to feel like somebody loved me.
Mm-hmm.
Not that my parents didn't, but I wanted something that was my own,
Right.
you know? So, so next time you go to the grocery store, pick up a can or a box of cereal or something and look at the expiration date on the bottom because every trafficked person has an expiration date. So it's now this summer of my 18th birthday, and I was still keeping in touch with my parents some, but that relationship was pretty severed because of my mom's actions.
And you're living at Carl's house though, at
I
this
am
point. Okay.
at this point until then. So I was sold to another trafficker at the end of that summer. Because I no longer was requested as much. I wasn't making as much money for Carl's dad, and I wasn't the new model. A trafficked person only has a certain shelf life.
They wanted younger
They wanted
again.
younger.
Yep.
They wanted younger. They wanted virgins because that money, people will pay a lot of money for that. I know this is gross, but this is reality, and parents need to understand this
Yes.
because this happens everywhere. They're constantly looking for new kids to groom, especially online. So I was sold to a woman. She became my trafficker, and I could tell that she was new at the game. It's called the game. And then I was sold again to a man. And at this point, I was starting to be moved across the US. I was in Iowa at this time. And you think Iowa, nice farming community and stuff like that. So then I was sold again to my final trafficker who brought me to Arizona. And this trafficker was extremely different. He was high end trafficking. So he spent a lot of money on our appearance. And this is one reason that I choose not to wear a lot of makeup because I had to.
Okay.
We had beautiful hair, we had beautiful nails. We were all starved to be very tiny, like size zeros. Um, we were sold anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 a night to very wealthy people, celebrities, politicians, doctors, CEOs, very powerful people. We would have to play these roles, and I say we because I wasn't the only girl that was in this particular apartment. That the trafficker had multiple apartments, but I was in this particular one with three other girls, so there were four of us. We didn't talk a lot because I found very quickly that they use things against each other.
Of course. Yes.
But we had bodyguards. We were flown to Washington, D.C., we were flown to New York, and we would be with a person for a whole weekend. We would attend events. It was the most bizarre thing because I'd gone from being sold in a basement to being sold in like the Waldorf Astoria.
Right. How did during that time, if you can remember, like what kind of things went through your head as far as like escaping, or that was just the norm to you and you were so brainwashed? Like what what did you struggle with as far as that? Because a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, why didn't she just leave?" But they don't
Yeah.
understand it's not that easy, and what they do to your mind and the manipulation and all that brainwashing. I'm just curious to know like what.
There were times I did. I did try to escape all the way
Oh,
back with Carl, and my parents'
okay.
cars would be, their tires would be slashed, the cars would be egged, they'd climb over the fence and let my dog that I loved dearly, they'd break the lock, let her loose. Um, when I would say that I couldn't come because I had to work, they'd say, "No, we know your schedule. You don't have to work, so you're coming." The threats are endless. They
So
are
all it's
endless.
intimidation and threatening you constantly.
Very much so. And then you
Yeah.
get to the point where you just die inside. You just go through the motions. By the time I was 18, I had given up because my parents didn't know what was going on. I
Right.
couldn't tell them what was going on. And I was just a walking shell of a dead person. And I was going through the motions. And talk about internal confusion, too.
Sure.
It's like, okay, one moment you're eating this filet mignon at this amazing restaurant. And then the next minute, you're being raped by four people. The confusion is intense. And so, because in my case, I was just a walking ball of confusion. I couldn't understand it.
Right.
And I had to learn quickly through punishments by the trafficker that were extremely painful, or they would control our food not only to keep us tiny, but to force us to submit. When you're hungry or you're thirsty, it's amazing what you will do just to live.
Yeah.
Our bodies want to live.
Right.
Our bodies physically want to go on, even if you've mentally checked out. And so I did. I had mentally checked out probably by the time I was 19. I knew there was no hope for me. The ways I tried to get help didn't work. And yeah, I tried to run a lot of times, but I couldn't with the last trafficker because I was always with somebody. When
Okay.
you're making $10,000 for somebody, they've got a bodyguard.
Right.
And when I flew with my bodyguard, nobody would have ever known I was being trafficked because they have this idea of what a trafficked person looks like. They're dirty, they're disheveled, they're wearing terrible clothing, or they're skimpily dressed. I
Right.
dressed in professional clothes. I looked like a young businesswoman. Would never have known.
Right.
Never have known. So, um, uh, was now in Arizona, and I started having dreams because I had been shot, I had been stabbed, I mean, beaten to a pulp. Yes, I went to the hospital. No, I never said anything. It was too scary.
Right.
I was afraid. When you get hit,
Yeah, and
don't.
your self-esteem, your self-worth, all the everything is probably just in the gutter at this point. Like where you probably felt like there's no hope for anything. So why try?
That's it, because when you're told you're trash, nobody
Right.
loves you, nobody wants you, you're lucky you're here, you'd be
Right.
out on the streets, you'd be dead, you start to believe all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that is where the brainwashing comes in, and you start to believe that because your trafficker is able to um, reinforce the words with his actions.
Right.
And yeah, you can't try and get away. Although with Pearl, that was my last chance. So with that trafficker, I had earned the privilege of going to the mailbox at the apartment complex unaccompanied. It was not very far, but I earned that privilege because I was submissive and I did what I was told to do.
Okay.
Um, because I didn't want to be hurt anymore. My body just hurt all
Right.
the time.
Right.
So there was this little old woman who lived kind of diagonal from the apartment that I was in, and her name was Pearl, and she would be at the mailbox. And she, little by little, she'd start talking to me, and she'd say, "I know something's wrong. I'll take you if you want to leave." And she was a small woman, and you think by then I was a mean, nasty person. When I wasn't having to play a role, I was a very foul person to be around because
Yeah.
I knew I was going to die this way, and it was just at the hands of who and when. And I had tried to communicate with my parents on occasion, and I just knew that wasn't an option. All of us girls would be required to check in with our parents every once in a while to tell them that, oh, we're just, well, anyway, I was out just traveling the world having a good time.
Right.
I was fine with them. So over a course of time, Pearl grew on me. And I started having these dreams that if I really did not get out, I was going to die. And I really didn't want to die. I did not want to die. I wanted to live, even though the way I was living was very painful. I was
Right.
very fearful of how I would die. Would I be beat to a pulp? Would I finally be shot where it killed me? And so one day, Pearl was at the mailbox and I walked away with her. I thought, okay, I have a better chance of overpowering this tiny woman than my bodyguards and these big guys. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try. I am going to try. And this Pearl always had her keys in her pocket. And because she just told me one day that she knew that I would say yes. And I went away with her.
Oh, like she never gave up.
No, she never gave up on me. But I still struggle. I still struggle because I knew the girls left behind were being hurt because they were being asked where I went. And I still struggle with that because I have no idea what happened
Oh,
to any of them. I'd ask Pearl. The trafficker never knew that Pearl was the one to get me away. She was like dynamite in a tiny body, man. She was something. But she took me to some church. And it's ironic, this concept of basements, because I was kept in a basement of this church. But the difference was that they loved me. When they asked me if I wanted something to drink or eat and what I'd like, I knew I was safe. Because they asked me what I wanted.
what you wanted.
And then I had to learn what I liked and didn't like. Because I
Well, you
was
were never
told,
given that option to,
no,
to
I
have a
was told,
choice.
you will
Yeah.
like this wine, you will like this drink, you will like this food. When you go to eat, you will eat this, you will wear this. This is the music that will be playing. And so I had no control over anything. So from that point on, it took a long time to not put my life together. I had to create a whole new life because the life I originally had, that person was gone.
Right.
And they didn't have all these resources like they do now.
Hmm.
So I fumbled. Boy, did I fumble. My life was a mess for a really, really long
Did
time.
you guys go to the police or were you too afraid?
Mm-mm. I never went to the police. I was terrified. I was terrified of the police. They would put me in jail because I was a prostitute.
Right.
But I wasn't a prostitute. I
But
never
they
ever.
probably put that in your head
Oh,
for
100%.
sure.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
they still do that. I never, ever, ever kept even a penny of the money that was made off of not just myself, but the other girls. And no, I was terrified of the police.
Right.
Now I have a good relationship with them because I work with them. But
Right.
well, I tell you, it took a long time. And it was 25 years of falling on my face, trying to figure out who I was, what I was. I got married. That was because I thought that was the thing to do. That was disastrous. The blessing was I had my children in that relationship, but even trying to figure out how to be a mother, I was terrible at it. I had no idea. I had no idea how to.
When you had no guidance and
No. Mm-mm.
everything you had been through, it has nothing to do with any of that, for you to have any examples, gosh.
No, I didn't have any examples, and so I picked a partner who, he wasn't physically abusive, but I still went into a mentally abusive situation. His parents were that way. They would play games. If they were mad at him, our kids would not get Christmas gifts, but yet we'd have to go to the house and watch the other grandkids get Christmas gifts.
What?
So it was still this mental stuff. And I never had anybody to defend me, ever.
Right.
Nobody defended me. And so that ended up in a bad situation. Um, and eventually my kids did go live with their dad because I was bouncing all over the place.
Right.
And I have relationships with my kids. I never lost that contact, but I was not a good mom. I
Right.
and I'll tell people that I wasn't because I didn't know what to do. I was
Right.
still trying to figure out how to heal myself. And then on top of it, trying to get a job, and that was hard. And then so I became a nursing assistant. Went on and became I got my LPN and worked in labor and delivery, and I didn't like it.
Oh, you
I did,
didn't.
did not like it at all. I found the hospital setting was still too jarring for me. The smells from the times that I would have to go into the hospital when I was hurt from being
Right.
trafficked was just too much for me. Um, and so I have this little feisty side in me, and I know God put that in there because that's what keeps me going. And
Right.
so I said, you know what? I'm going to become a flight attendant because I need to master the hotel room. And so I did. I started working with America West Airlines, and I was a
Okay.
flight attendant. And that is when I felt empowered. I could open that hotel door, go in and out, in and out. My crewmates, they were like, "What's wrong with you? Why do you keep going in and out? Oh, I gotta go get ice. Oh, wait a minute, I gotta go get this." But it was because I had to know I was in control of
The
that door.
freedom of doing that. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then so I'd start watching people on the airplane and just kind of seeing if I ever saw any kids or young people or even young women that were in my situation. And there were times I saw some things that were odd, so I would tell the pilot, you know, we might want to have security come and just talk to these people. I never knew what happened, so I can't say that I ever rescued another survivor.
Right.
I I didn't, but that was the most empowering job for me, and that's actually where I met my current husband, was on an airplane.
Okay.
And he's such a good guy. We've been married now for 24 years. Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. He really gave me the space that I needed to figure out who I was. He gave me the safety, the boundaries of safety that I had, and I started to figure out who I really am and what am I supposed to do with all this. And so there was some stirrings pre-COVID. I thought, okay, I think I'm ready to talk about it. And then COVID just kind of shut everything down. And then
Mm-hmm.
after that, I said, okay, I'm ready to go. Lord, what do you want me to do? He says, you're going to talk about it. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You're you're going to talk about this. You are going to talk about this, and you're going to keep talking about it.
Right.
And now, kind of in the world of legislation, I'm known as the quiet big mouth because a lot of times I just sit back and observe.
Yeah.
But when it comes to protecting kids, I'm not going to shut up.
Right.
So, so 4 years ago, I launched Pearl at the Mailbox. I didn't know where it was going to go. So the first year was just kind of building a name. And some people are like, well, what a stupid name. And I'm like, well, I'm honoring this woman that saved me. I
Oh
don't
my
care what
gosh, of
you think
course.
about it. This
Yeah.
woman saved my life. And I will never, ever forget her. She's already passed. But um,
Oh.
so I'm like, okay, all right, what am I going to do? So I started just educating about what grooming is, how it happens, what to look for. There's a ton of information on my website, pearlatthemailbox.org. Started just connecting in the political world because I knew when I started looking at the laws in Arizona and the lack of protection for minors, I was like, this is
Mm-hmm.
unacceptable. And even that for survivors. Survivors get charged, with a crime and it stays with them forever. So in 24, this is what I have done. So prior to the beginning of 24, I reached out to every legislator, so House and Senate here in Arizona. I introduced myself, I shared a little bit of my story, and I shared what I wanted to do, which was to update the vacator law, which is to protect survivors who were charged with local crimes to be able to get those removed. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to increase penalties for buyers and a whole list of things. So, how many people was that? Oh gosh, maybe 100 and something. I heard from a handful of them. And I'm like, okay, these are the people that I am going to work with. And so last legislative session got the vacator law updated. The governor signed it into law. So I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to stop now. So
Love
we're
that.
gonna hit things at the federal level too. So I got connected with people up in D.C. and I said, what are we going to do? And so we work on all this different legislation. And so on Monday, the Take It Down Act will be signed by the president. And I've been invited to be there to see the signing of
This
that
coming
bill.
Monday?
Uh huh. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So the Take It Down Act was sponsored by Senator Cruz. It now, and this is so important because of the digital age, how you have these deep fakes. You can take a young child's face and put it on a woman's body.
Right.
The Take It Down Act will now require that when tech companies are notified of such an image by the police department, they have 48 hours to take it down, or they will get charged with fines. Tech companies
Wow.
fought that like crazy, but we got it through the House and the Senate up there. I testified many times up there on the Hill and spoke before the House and the Senate about just a lot of things. And so it's going to be signed on Monday into law, and I'm so grateful.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
huge. That's
it's huge.
huge.
Isn't it
Yes.
huge? And then
Yes.
hopefully, the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act will be signed in July. That will help a survivor who is charged with a federal crime, like a robbery, money
Okay.
laundering, something like that, while they were being trafficked, and
Okay.
it can be proved. I mean, there's still, you have to still prove it.
Sure.
Gives them an avenue to be either released from prison and then have those charges set aside. So
Right.
it gives survivors a chance to be able to have a life,
Right.
you know,
Right.
to not have these things hanging over them. They can't pass background checks.
Right.
How I was never charged with the crime is by the grace of God. I don't know. You know, I mean, I stole water and
Right.
crackers and stuff all the
Right.
time.
Right. But your story is just, it's so powerful too. And the fact that you're telling it, it's, sorry, I'm still struggling. I just got my voice back. I was like sick for
Oh,
2 weeks.
no.
So I'm like,
No, no.
um, but your story, putting it out there like this and telling your story, because it's not what we all picture in our head.
No.
We picture trafficking as, okay, someone kidnaps a child or a teenager, they take them somewhere to sell them off. And people have
Yeah,
no idea that
they
there's
don't.
so many different ways that this can happen.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think the media has done a big disservice to people in general
Yes.
because, and even the movies, because that's how they show trafficking
Right.
happens.
Right.
So people are always looking for somebody that's going to drive by in a white van and scoop them in. And that's,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, that can happen, but 99% of the time, it's the relationship has been built and the
Right.
victim willingly goes with the trafficker.
Right. Yes.
And that's what people need to understand.
People don't
And
know that. People
no,
don't know that. They don't realize that. That's not even, I don't even think that they process anything like that in their head.
not at
They,
all.
no.
Well, and all people, if it's not going to impact you in some way, you don't pay attention to
Right.
it.
Right.
I mean, I could say that with other things. If it's not going to impact
Of
my life, why
course.
should I pay attention to it?
Yes.
But the thing is, anybody that has a child in their life, their child could be at risk.
Right.
When you go online and all the groomers are there. A couple years ago, I had an opportunity to go into, they call it the hot house. So it was where there was this big massive grooming operation going on online. So they had all these keyboards, they had multiple screens everywhere, which showed that a groomer was talking to like 10, 15 kids at the same time, playing these different roles, using different images to relate to the age of that child, and drawing out information from all these kids. And it was very eye-opening. I'm one of these that I don't think a kid should have a phone until they're 21 or 22 and our
Right.
brain is developed enough to spot danger.
Right.
But that won't ever happen.
Mm-mm.
So
Wow.
we got to talk and have conversations.
So on your website, you have like different examples of grooming and
Oh,
all the different things
yes.
that could happen. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Talk about grooming, talk about trafficking, talk about what to look for, what to do about it. We just launched last month the National Grooming Prevention Hotline for people to call if they just have questions. It's for adults to call if they think
Sure.
that there's a grooming situation possibly going on in their family, just
Right.
to have a resource to bounce things off of. And
Right.
some of our calls have actually resulted in Homeland Security getting involved in a situation. And we step back at that point. We just almost become the connector
Okay.
because my goal again is to just stop it before it happens.
Well,
That's the
even
goal.
to get all the education out there for the kids, the people that are being trafficked, like you were being threatened with video, with this, your reputation, your parents, all these things. Like, if we can get that education out there too, that they know that doesn't matter. Let them threaten you. Let them say all those things. Like,
Right.
you can get away. You
Yeah.
can stop it. Because
Yes, you
that
can.
that fear is real. They're instilling crazy fear in you.
Yeah. The
Like,
fear is very powerful. It's a very powerful
debilitating.
motivator.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
because you just become very complicit because of fear. And
Right.
then sometimes you just freeze and they just do what they want to do with you.
Right.
So parents need to be educated. And I know it's another long list of things that parents need to do, but
It's
this world
okay.
is so very different.
Yes.
You know, your job as a parent is to keep your kids safe, not be their friend.
Right.
Be the parent, have rules, boundaries, talk about good touch, bad touch, talk about personal body respect. So that's the book that's called Smart, Safe, and Strong.
Okay.
That's now on Amazon. And it's a good way to talk with the younger kids. And there's a lot of questions in the back of the book. It's a very cute little picture book.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a conversation starters. Like,
Yes.
okay, do you like mommy and daddy giving you hugs? Would you call that a good touch or a bad touch? Do
Right.
you like it when grandma comes over and she wants you to hug her right away? Or would you say, not now, please? Things like that. You know, so kids can learn to be in control of their bodies
Right.
at a young age. Because I grew up in the generation you respect your adults, you listen to what they say, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't question it.
Right.
And sometimes you got to question.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Again, I've said this a few times on here already. My kids, my grandkid, no one spends the night anywhere. No one goes with people
Mhm.
because you just don't know what's going on in another household or
Yeah.
someone's friend's friend or brother or uncle or aunt, whoever. Like, you just, it's really sad that you have to be that paranoid, but that's the reality
It
of
is
where
the
we're
reality.
at today.
Hmm.
And we were just having this conversation with my grandson on the way here because he lives with us here in Nashville because he's a competitive dancer,
Oh,
and
cool.
we don't let him spend the night anywhere. But a lot of the other kids do. But there are other families that don't do that either. And it was like a joke, but not a joke. I'm like, and he's like, why? I don't understand. And I'm like, Brayden, because I don't ever want you going on a podcast one day and having to tell your story of something that happens. Okay, like
Yeah.
we've all lived this. Like, there's a reason that we have these rules. There's a reason that we have to be this cautious, and it's not to scare the shit out of them, but
Right.
it's to make them understand. Like, you have to be aware, you have to know what's right and wrong. You have to
Right.
know that you can talk to somebody about it.
Right.
And
Hmm.
because, like you've said too, I mean, fear, they can put fear in you that's debilitating to even us adults. People can do the
Hmm.
same. And God, if we can avoid things like that happening and like what happened to you by educating people,
Absolutely.
that's everything. It's
Yeah, it
everything.
is. It is. I've had such a battle, at least with the schools here in Arizona. They don't want any of this in the schools. They consider it sex education. And like, are you kidding me? You have
Sounds like they need
drivers.
to be a little more educated in general.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah.
we had a battle here where we were trying to get the official term for grooming on the books I was trying to get that in our Constitution, and nobody could even agree on what grooming was there, so it became child enticement. And I kept going back. Do you guys realize that grooming is what it was in 1980? But
Right.
now it's like considered a slur to certain groups, and it's like, oh, all the stuff within the school. And I'm like, you guys have taken this term that has destroyed so many people's lives, and you're
Yes.
playing politics with it.
Yes.
And stop it. Just stop it. So and so we worked on legislation here in Arizona. We got some things passed, some things not. They're just not going to get rid of me because I'm going to keep coming.
Good girl.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
bark and keep barking all you want. They don't, it does not even matter.
You know, you're right because you know what? I've seen evil firsthand.
Yeah.
I've lived through it.
Lived
I
it.
really don't have anything to fear.
Right.
I don't have anything to fear. I I just this is just so important to me.
Well, one of your biggest fears now is probably you never want to see other people go through that.
No, I don't.
And if you can stop it
No.
and educate and do whatever you need to do,
Yeah, absolutely.
like,
It's
it's
hard
just
to
so
get your
mind blowing. It's all just so mind blowing. And
it's
how
hard to
bad it's
get
gotten. I mean, this is
it's
back in the late 80s with you.
mhm.
Can you even imagine? No, you can't. You can't even imagine what's going on out there now.
Well, I can because we still deal with it with situations that, and I'm very connected in our community, so I'm very aware of what is happening nationwide. And the
Right.
internet was it's the devil's playground and the greatest gift to a groomer and trafficker ever,
Right.
you know. So we've got to talk about this stuff. And even with the online games, Roblox, Fortnite, those are big grooming grounds there. So I say,
Really?
oh yeah, oh yeah. Anything that has a chat feature or rooms where these kids can go one on one with somebody,
Right.
uh, yeah.
Until they're
What
old enough to understand
but
what
they're
that
never.
means. And yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
What I say is,
there's adults that probably fall for that all the time.
oh, of course they do.
Yeah.
But rather than make the game the bad guy, play with your kid or be right next to your kid when they're playing
Right.
so you can lean over and see what they're doing.
Right.
Because I know those are topics of a lot of young kids. Like one of my grandsons, he plays it, but my daughter is right with him, so
Mm-hmm.
he sees everything that's going on. Even though you can disable the chat features, somebody with ill intent can override that and still
Right.
pop in. So you just play with them and you limit the amount of time that they're online. And you know, yesterday I learned that Google Maps is now a place where, where trafficking is occurring because
Google Maps.
you can put little pins and say there's a police car here or there. So traffickers are now using it as a way to have like the victim put a little pin. Oh, I'm at this address. And so yeah, so people who want to do bad things are going to use
They
every
find a way.
resource out
Yeah.
there. Hmm.
Right. Right.
So we got to teach our kid to be much smarter.
I'm so excited for you for Monday. That is awesome.
It's very humbling. It's nice to see that bugging people as much as I have
Right.
to support these bills and writing letters and calling actually does pay off. And
Yeah, there's a good consequence coming out of it for
I
sure.
know. So that'll
Wow.
be, I'm very honored and humbled. So that's a good victory.
Yes.
That's a
Hey,
good
you'll
victory.
take any of them, right?
Oh, I'll take all of them because I'm
Yes.
just not going to stop. So,
So, like in closing out, what would be something that I mean, you've given a lot of good points and things to look for. What what would be some of the top things that you would tell parents or even the children, teenagers?
right.
What would you tell them?
Well, at a very young age, first of all, you teach them proper names for their body parts.
Okay.
Because heaven forbid the police ever need to investigate with the child and somebody says, oh, my cookie, that's going to blow the whole investigation. So teach proper names of body parts. Start right away introducing good touch, bad touch to the kids. Have these conversations. Teach children not to just run up to people that they don't know because they may have a puppy or something like that, but not scare them. Say,
Right.
ask mommy first or ask daddy first.
Right.
Because,
Take somebody with you, something. Yeah.
yeah, so that whoever their safe circle of grown-ups is, in my book I talk about how you create this safe circle of grown-ups. And so, like with the young kids, you take a picture and you put it on your computer, or I mean not on your refrigerator, make a magnet or something, so that child, when they're 4 5 6, they know these are the safe people they can go to if they need um, to go there if mom or dad or whoever is not present. So you
Right.
start with that. You start having conversations with your kids at a young age about, let's talk about the day. Did somebody hurt your feelings today? Did somebody hurt your body today? Did you have a good touch today? So you start those conversations at a young age, and then they carry on until you're older.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and then with like the teenage kids, is you got to talk to them about um, that your friends are not always the people that you should tell things to, that you mom and dad are your allies and we're here.
Right.
But if you
Yes.
don't start that young, the kids aren't
Well,
going to
because
know what to do when they're older.
communication's everything, all the way into adulthood. And that's what a lot of us lack. So if we can
Yeah,
start early, yeah, I agree with you. So
make it a
important.
healthy conversation, right? Not scare
Yes.
them,
Right.
but make it something that's normal.
Right. Yeah.
And then you continue on and you open that door when they become like a preteen and they start to want to become a recluse and live in their room and stuff,
Right.
that um, you have family time. It's
Mm-hmm.
mandated. You're there.
Right.
You are a family. Never devices in a room behind a closed door
Right.
ever. They're always docked either in parents' room or somewhere where it's
Mm-hmm.
lock and key, because it's a big temptation for teenagers to want to see who's been messaging them or how
For
many
sure.
likes they got on something, right? So
Right.
the list could go on and on, but you're
Right.
right. It goes back to communication.
Yeah. Wow. It's so scary that that happened to you so long ago. You know,
And
we didn't even hear about it back then that I remember. I
there
mean,
wasn't a name for it.
yeah. God.
So I would have been blamed. Or if I had ever gotten arrested, I would have
Right.
been in jail for prostitution.
Right. Right.
Yeah. The it was the late 1980s when these conversations started happening about, whoa, wait a minute, what is trafficking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's been a lot of people that have done a lot of great work well before I ever came along, that have made a big dent in this crime, which is what it is.
For sure. Did
And
your
now,
parents ever find out the story, the whole
um,
story?
they knew some. My mom passed in 2006, so
Mm.
I never really got to have that conversation with her. We didn't have a good relationship after I turned 18.
Right.
My father, he lives in another state, but I do go. I've almost kind of become his caretaker, and he feels really bad. And I'm like, Dad, that's in the past. Let's look at all the amazing things that are happening.
Right. Right.
That's what we need to focus on. All the great things that are happening and how
Right.
things are, people are talking about this now.
Right. And you have kids and grandkids and you're just educating everybody and it's just wonderful.
Trying. I'm trying. I am
Well, we're
trying.
going to need pictures for Monday.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they let me take my phone in. I don't know why they wouldn't.
You
It's
have
going to
them.
be on the lawn, so
Okay.
that's really cool. I know I had to
Wonderful.
fill out this whole form for a security background check. I'm like, holy cow. Okay.
Aw, that's so awesome. I can't
Yeah.
wait to see.
Very-
And we'll make sure that Kenna puts all, your different links in the
Thank you.
description too. Your
Yeah.
website, your books. Put it
Thank
all.
you.
We'll put it all in there.
Yeah.
I
That'd
think
be
because I think it's really educational for people too, especially
Mhm.
when you're doing the children's books too, with the good
Yeah.
touch, bad touch, because a lot of people just feel really uncomfortable even having that conversation with their kids.
Hey,
I'm not sure why, but maybe their upbringing. I mean, who knows? There could be a million different reasons, but if they can refer to a book and kind of read through the book with them,
yeah. Yeah.
maybe that'll help.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, it's just a place to start for sure.
Well, you're doing amazing,
Thank you.
and thank you
And
for
thank you
coming
for
on
this.
and sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.